and we're broadcasting, and you'll see the attendee list just go into the hundreds. So
cool.
Give it a couple seconds.
Several hundred, or as Mike used to say, a dinner party.
We'll give everybody a minute to get on.
So Dennis, where are you at right now?
I'm actually at home in Florida. It's been great weather here. We've been very, very lucky. So we're in and out all the time.
And what part of Florida are you in?
I'm north of the Palm Beach area in a place called Martin County. So I live in a place called Palm City. So it's a lot smaller than if you go down to Palm Beach County, but it has all the benefits of being close to everything with less population.
Oh, nice.
All right. So welcome everybody from Coldwell Banker from across the world. Once again, we have some really cool stuff to talk about. Shouts out to all the Coldwell Banker managers and leaders who have been a part of getting all these great people to join us on these calls. And I'll say this really quick before we get started. We have these conversations and the speaker usually presents, and at the end we have Q&A. And I want to tell you guys, you should stick around for the Q&A because that's when our speakers go a little bit raw. So we're expecting a lot out of Dennis in that 10 minutes at the end. So excited for the talk today. Mike, go ahead.
Hey, thank you very much, Peter. So many of you have seen Peter's handsome face, complete with the Coldwell Banker baseball cap there, broadcasting live from his study. I have been on not as a panelist, but watching all of the tremendous work these guys have done. So my name is Mike Carter. I am the owner of Coldwell Banker Legacy in Albuquerque, New Mexico and West Texas, along with my partner, Joe Gilmore. And it is our pleasure to be part of this esteemed group that's been putting together all of these great Zoom webinars. And today, my contribution to the great Zoom webinar is to introduce to you Dennis Giannetti. We found Dennis a few years ago when we were doing an annual sales rally, and we needed a keynote speaker. And if you've ever looked for a keynote speaker before, it's really hard because you've got to find somebody that is electric, that is charismatic, that is smart, that does a great job, that can deliver from the stage to a bunch of people who he has never even met and haven't met him. And Dennis was so darn good, for the first time in the company's history, we brought him back for a repeat performance twice. So he has been just a great guy, a wealth of information. I'm going to let him tell you about the details about him, but Dennis is really well-versed in that he is a certified ninja instructor. He is a certified, let's see if I can go down the whole list. Well, you know what, Dennis, rather than me going down the whole list, I'm going to let you take it away and tell them a little about yourself and what you're going to talk about today.
All right. Well, I appreciate it. Thank you so much. First of all, thank you, Peter, for doing this. Mike, thank you, and Cindy, as well as Joe and Ivana, for all the times that I'd been out there to New Mexico. You guys were gracious hosts, and part of the reason it was so successful when I was out there had a lot to do with the way that you run that company. It is a family, and you made me feel like part of it, so thank you all so much for that. And also to everybody here that's at the Coldwell Banker Network, just a side note, I started my real estate career in the Coldwell Banker Network, and a lot of respect for what I've seen Coldwell Banker do over the years to work hard and innovate for every single one of their associates, their employees. It's a class organization, and I'm very happy to be here. So let me get started. Having said that, with how I got into real estate, and I think this is just quick and easy, but it really proves a point for any of us who got into the real estate business. When I was in high school, I met with my guidance counselor. My guidance counselor, well, I mean, let's just say it. He told me not to bother applying to college. And I don't know the actual definition of guidance counselor, but I'm pretty sure that wasn't it. So he said, don't even apply to college. Well, my father, he owned an auto body shop, largest one on the Cape. And he said to me, listen, he goes, talk to your mother because I'm busy, right? I said, okay. So I go to my mom. I says, what do I do? Because I can't run the auto body shop. I didn't have those skills. She goes, Den, let's get you your real estate license. So I did. I went and I got my real estate license. I took the course at 17 years old, and just after I turned 18, I went and passed my Massachusetts real estate license exam. Now, my mom was very encouraging, and I'll get back to her. It's what my dad did next that was interesting. He didn't know if I was going to do that or not, but he decided that once he did, and I did, he was going to sit me down and talk to me about real estate. And this was his interpretation. And you got to follow it all the way through. He basically said, Dan, let me tell you about getting into real estate. He said, getting into real estate is like going to Denny's, which right away I'm thinking, has he been talking to my guidance counselor? What is going on? He said, getting into real estate is going to Denny's. Nobody really goes to Denny's. They kind of just end up there. So now I'm really discouraged at this point. Like, this is my dad, right? He goes, wait a minute, let me finish. I said, what? He goes, they kind of just end up there, but it doesn't matter where you end up. It matters that you show up. All of a sudden, the lesson started to take place. Have I shown up to this point through school and the things that I did? Was I coasting? Was I thinking about what I wanted in the future? Was the guidance counselor wrong to say that? Yeah, but in a way, it was a spark. It was a flame, just like what my father did. To ask me that question, this is where you are now. And remember, wherever you are now, you made an appointment to be there. And so I made an appointment and I had to own it and I needed to show up. And that was so, so important for me. Because if I didn't show up from that point on, I was going to be in trouble. My second lesson in real estate came when I actually had gone to university and gotten myself a bachelor's degree, and I got into the real estate business in Florida. And I'm walking around the office, and I say to myself after a couple weeks, you know, Mom, a lot of real estate agents at the time, this is years ago, and I said a lot of real estate agents at the time, they don't have college degrees. You could just get your license and go at it. And, you know, and I just thought maybe because they get business degrees, or I didn't know. I was ignorant. I was young. And she says, oh, honey, I love you so much. And I'm so proud of you for getting that degree. But they do have one thing in common that you don't right now. And I said, well, what's that? They're making money. And so I'm like, okay, what do you suggest for me to do? And what she told me to do is go talk to a guy by the name of John Ramposada. And she says, John's our top agent right now. Go in there, say, can I buy you lunch? Can I have coffee with you? Can I just have 5 minutes of your time? Can you talk to me about being successful in the real estate business? Because she didn't want it to come from her. And he did. And that's when I learned another big lesson. Sometimes it's good to look up. Now that could have a spiritual connotation for you. In this context, I'm talking about looking up to masters or mentors, people who are really good at what they do. That's one of the reasons ninja selling became so successful, because Larry Kendall had the vision and the foresight to say, who's doing what well and why? And so I decided at that young age, how can I do that? So the first person I got introduced to was Richard Flint. And I don't know if anybody knows Richard Flint or heard of him before, but he was a speaker for a long, long time. And he had this little thing called mental aerobics. And what was interesting was I started listening to these things and saying, I never really heard this stuff before, this positive thinking and all this affirmation talk. And people, by the way, they'll say to me, hey, does positive thinking really work? And my answer is always the same. You know, I've tried negative thinking. It's a bad look. Of course it works, but it doesn't work if we're negative about wondering if it works. So he started me on that journey. And then I started listening to people like Les Brown. And I'm telling you this not only to tell you the story that got me here, but also because I bet you some of you have heard of some of these people I'm talking about too. And Les Brown used to have this phrase, you gotta be hungry, you know, and I can't do it like Les, I'm not gonna try. All I remember is listening to him over and over and over and practicing that line. And my daughter was in the back and she was probably 3 years old. And I'm waiting for her mom to come pick her up. And I've got this thing, I'm going, you gotta be hungry, you gotta be hungry. And in the back, my daughter goes, hungry daddy, hungry daddy. And you guys say, well, why are you telling us that? Because you'd be surprised the circle of influence that you have over the people that are in your life. You'd be surprised about how you carry yourself, the things that you do, that you read, that you say, how you stand, how you breathe, the tone, how that affects the people that are around you, your customers, your family, everybody. It affected a 3-year-old girl in the back of that car on that particular day. And it really, really woke me up. Wow, this can work. Then I got lucky. I met Bob Berg through my broker at Coldwell Banker. When she found that I wanted to maybe be a speaker, she says, go meet Bob Berg. And you all know Bob Berg, the go-giver. And let me tell you, I've known him for over 20 years. He is a true go-giver. He walks the walk almost as good as anybody I have seen in living what it is he's wrote and put out there. And over 2 million books in that Go-Giver series approximately sold. It feels good to know that we can walk with integrity in that topic on a day in and day out basis and know that the person who created that is one at that level. And I've learned a lot from him. Then, of course, Larry Kendall, when I was brought out to meet him, At the time, I had a graduate degree in training and development. I had been speaking and training, and the gentleman by the name of Chappie Adams brought me out to see Larry Kendall. And Chappie said, I love what you do, and you're doing a great job for us, because I was doing training and development for their particular brokerage. He goes, but I want to meet this guy, and I'd like you to meet him too. After that, I was hooked. When I saw Larry Kendall and ninja selling, I said, forget everything I'm doing. Let's do ninja selling, because TSW, this stuff works. And the last thing, or the last person, the last master for me was Tony Robbins. I'm sure some of you might have heard of him. And so Tony Robbins has been around a long, long time, over 40 years in the business, I believe. And I just was hooked with the UPW and the different things that he would put out there. So I went ahead and got certified as a Tony Robbins certified strategies coach. So that's the journey. Now, why is that all important to you? It's because we all have our journey. I was a kid told you can't do something, had a father who straightened me out fast, a mother that supported me, but I had to do two things. I had to show up and I had to look up. I show up every day to this day, and I look up every day, and what can I do to grow and learn so that I can contribute more to other people? And that's what we need to do in these times in the real estate business. We have to show up every day, even though it's easier not to. We got to look up every day and say, how can we grow so that we can contribute and add more to people's life? Because at the end of the day, you cannot give what you do not have. And if it's not in you emotionally and psychologically and mentally, you're not going to have that aura, that essence that's going to make other people feel good around you as well. And that's what they need more than anything right now, to feel good around you. And I don't necessarily mean physically, which, by the way, I'm sure Peter mentioned this with Ninja. When we say social distancing, by the way, just to put that out there, it's actually physical distancing. We need social connection and physical distancing, depending on what you believe. And at the end of the day, with or without what's going on, that's something we always need in this business. So what are the three key areas? And I've got some activities for everybody too. So when I do these activities, you're welcome to put them in the chat room, or you can just get out a piece of paper and a pen, or you can just think about it in your head, but there's gonna be some activities for us to do here too. But what are the three key areas then that made a difference, not just to me, but to everybody that I've worked with, whether it's a company, whether it's a real estate agent, whether it's people in the relationships? What have these masters taught me if I was to break it down into a nutshell? And there are three things. Number one is mastery. It's what we need to do, not just what we want to do. A lot of times, it's what we want to do that actually takes us off track. For example, if I want to be healthy, then I need to eat right. Right? So I say to myself, hey, I need to eat right, but guess what happens? I really want a cookie. And then I want another one and another one. I want to make my business better. So I need to do my lead generation. But you know what happens? As much as I need to do my lead generation, I want to find something else to do that'll distract me from that. The number one thing I would hear from real estate agents all the time is they would come to me and say, I have nothing in the pipeline. What am I going to do? And I'd say, let me ask you a question. Did you just have some closings? And almost all the time, the answer was yes. And do you know why the answer was yes? Because after they had the closings, they had nothing in the pipeline due to the fact that the majority, and at different levels, this isn't just new, at different levels, the majority didn't lead generate during the time they were working on the deals. It was like that roller coaster, right? Where they're saying, all right, I did some work, I got the deals, I'm working on the deals, I'm gonna stop doing the work to get more deals. Now we hope those deals close, but when that roller coaster comes down, there's nothing in the pipeline. So our mastery has to be looking at what are the key things, skills, strategies, process, systems that we've got to get really good at in order for us to succeed. Our motivation is different. And this is where a lot of times we go wrong in all sales industries. Here's why. Motivation is what we feel but don't follow for very long. Motivation could actually come in the form of pain and pleasure. If I say to you, hey, if you do really well this month, you're going to be on the top of the board, you're going to get an award, you're going to be recognized, we're going to give you free whatever, and guess what? That's motivation. Problem is, it's all the way out here. It's not right in front of you, but it's out there and it's necessary. That said, motivation can also be pain. And pain is, if you don't do this in 3 or 4 or 5, 6 months, we're going to sit down and have a talk and maybe this will happen. And so now people have to decide, will I pursue the pleasure or will I avoid the pain? Here's the trick with motivation. Most of the things that we have to do called lead measures, right? Lead measures are things you do to get to the lag measures, which are the outcomes. To get to the outcomes, I have to do things now. Make my calls, write my notes, get my marketing and advertising out. most of those things we're motivated in the moment to do, and that goes away very, 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 very fast. And it's the consistency or the lack of it that doesn't allow that motivation to be enough, if that makes sense. So what do we need to do is our mastery. Our motivation is a feeling, but it doesn't sustain because we're thinking out here more than right now. So momentum is the third. And this is what we do consistently. This is what we do consistently. And this is where processes and systems like, for example, Ninja will come into play, like Go Giver will come into play, the Tony Robbins stuff comes into play, or whatever you're using for yourself, your team. And oh, by the way, this isn't just about real estate. All the things we're talking about today and what we're going to go through, that applies to your life as well. And you'll see what I mean in just a moment. So how are we doing so far? Pete, Mike, are we okay? We're good? All right. So
Sorry, I'm busy taking notes. I'm sorry about that.
no,
I
I just want to
had
make
to
sure.
unmute myself. Good
You're
job.
crushing it. Keep going.
All right, I didn't know. I was married a long time and I tended to talk a lot, and you know, I just got to tell me. All right, so let's talk about mastery. Mastery is probably the first thing we want to look at, but let's do an assessment, folks. Let's look at 3 areas of our life, and I'm going to do this a little bit slower because I want you guys to write this down and I want you to break it down for yourself. I want you to look first at health. Okay, we're going to talk about health, wealth, and relationships. Let's start off with health. Okay, how do we deal with this? I want you to write it into 3 subcategories. Number 1, physical. Number 2, mental. And number 3, emotional. So 1, physical, 2, mental, and 3, emotional. So you have all 3 written down under health. Now I'd like you to rate yourself on a scale of 1 being low and 10 being high in all 3 of those areas. So, for example, if physically I'm in great shape, I might say I'm an 8, a 9, or a 10. If I'm not, I'll be lower than that. Mentally and psychological mental health, psychological strength, that has a lot to do with your perseverance, your resilience, your commitment to growth, you know, moving forward consistently versus being complacent, right? So your mental health, 1 being really low, you're burnt out, you're just overwhelmed, right? 10 being you're sharp and ready to go day in and day out. And then emotional health, are you more, if you remember from the 4 quadrants of energy, for example, are you high positive, right? Emotional, are you low positive? Are you low negative, high negative? Are you angry? Are you upset? Are you fearful? Or are you exuberant and happy and grateful? So where are you on a scale of 1 through 10 in all 3 of those areas? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep quiet for about 25 seconds while everybody takes a moment to write that stuff down, where they are on a scale of 1 through 10 in each of those areas. And then we'll get to the next area. Good. All right. So that's area number 1. And trust me, everybody, hang on for this ride because you're going to walk out of here today with clarity. You know what the number one tool for anxiety is in this world? Clarity. Clarity is key, right? So what's the second thing? Wealth. Now, we're going to put 2 categories here. 1, you do every day, business building, right? On a scale of 1 through 10, 1 being that's something I'd like to do someday, and 10 being, oh no, I'm a business building machine, right? Like I got to know Peter real quick before. He's a business building machine. Mike was telling me, I'm listening. I'm okay, that's a 10, right? So on a scale of 1 through 10, 1 being I'd like to build my business, 10 being, oh no, every day I'm on it. Where are you? The second category, wealth building. That's your wake up money. What do you do with the money that you make so that it makes money even while you're still doing what you're doing? In other words, you wake up in the morning and somehow, whether you've invested in real estate, whether you're in the stock market, whether you own businesses, whatever it is, what's your wake up money plan? A lot of real estate agents don't have this wake up money plan. And that's a problem, right? Because then we're affected by the market. Then we're affected by personal situations. Then we're affected by something like that's happening now, right? And I'm saying this because it's a small percentage of the real estate population, but there are people that are out there that they get frustrated when the dues are due. They could be $800 and they have a year to pay them, but then they're doing like, oh my God, the dues are due. We got to be good with our money, not just in saving, not just in making it, but in putting it in things that will make money, not just putting it away, make money so that later on we have a plan whenever our other plan stops. Maybe we sell our business, maybe we don't, but we better have some other things going on. I hope that makes sense. Okay, so you got your health, you got your wealth, you rated 1 through 10 on each. And if you haven't, go right ahead and do that now. We're gonna get to the third area, okay? Third area, relationships. This is the last of the 3 that I'm talking about here under mastery, but it's the most important. And we're gonna keep it real simple. Personal relationships and business relationships. On a scale of 1 through 10, 1 being I need a divorce attorney, and 10 being we've been together forever, we love each other every day, it's fantastic. That's that kind of relationship. You got your kids, you got your parents, you got your friends, all personal relationships on a scale of 1 through 10, 10 being the best, 1 being the lowest, where are you? Business relationships, slightly different edge here. On business relationships, as Bob Berg has said, when all else is equal, people do business with those they know, like, and trust. Here's the key, and are in flow with. So you can't say 10 on this one unless you're in flow with the people in your business relationship circuit. They know me, we like each other, we trust each other, but if you're not hitting them at least once or twice a month, if they're key people for you in flow, you're not a 10 there. Just that one I'm going to put out there for you. So 1 through 10, where are you in those areas? So go ahead and take about 15 seconds, put that in there, think about it for a minute, and then I'm going to have another little question for you on what to do with these in a minute. Okay, so we have our 1 through 10 in all these areas. I would like you to pick any one of your choices. Any one of the 3 from health, any one of the 2 from wealth, or any one of the 2 from the relationships. Just pick one, okay? And the idea is for you to look at wherever you are, whether it's a 3, whether it's a 6, whether an 8 or a 9, maybe there's some 10s out there, but we'll touch back on that in a second. Wherever you are, look at that number and then ask yourself this question. In the area that I chose and the number that I gave, what would I have to do to close the gap? This is just you searching inside of yourself for the moment. What would I have to do to close that gap? So if I was in my relationship and I thought it was a 5, the first thing I'm thinking is, well, what do I have to do to go from a 5 to a 10? Now, you don't have to have all the answers now. You just got to try, right? Tony Robbins used to say, look, if you really want to have a 10 relationship, you have to treat it throughout like you did in the beginning, because if you treat it like you did in the beginning, throughout, there'd never be an ending. But for most people to say, well, that's easier said than done, to which I say to you, yeah, but it's got to get done if it's going to get easier. Everything's easier said and done until it's done. Then once it's done, it gets easier. But we got to step up and look up and show up. So that's kind of the key. So pick any one of your areas and then ask yourself, where do I need to close the gap in this area? This is just to get you started, okay? If we stopped right now, the fact of the matter is you literally would have said to yourself, wow, here's where I assess my life in these key areas. Here's an area that I just took out of nowhere. This is a number that I chose, and here's some things I said I got to do to make that area of my life better. If we stopped right now, you would have at least a partial plan to making that area of your life better. But that being said, little challenge for you here. I'm going to call it the 1 through 10 myth. And I know some of you are guilty of this. I've been guilty of this. And most people, when I'm teaching a class anywhere around the country, are guilty of this, and that's this. When I ask people to rate themselves a 1 through 10, and I bet you there's a portion of you who did say 10, but I bet you the majority of you didn't say 10, right? Hopefully you did. Every time I go someplace, probably 95% of the people never put out a 10. And you know why? I asked them, why didn't you put out a 10? Why aren't you a 10 in that particular area? And they say the same thing, because there's always room for, and if we were all together, you would be saying improvement, because we've heard that over and over and over again. Here's the problem. In our world, because of the way we've been conditioned and trained, we think 10 is the end. 10 is not the end. 10 is the doorway to the new beginning. 10 is not our best self. It's our best self in that moment as we prepare to go to the next self at the next level. But most people would rather hang out at an 8.5, saying how close they were to a 10, than cross that bridge of a 10 and start over as a 1 or a 2. Most people would like to be a JV starting quarterback than a varsity backup quarterback sitting on the bench. And that's the problem, because even when we rate ourselves on a scale of 1 through 10, We need to understand that's today. That's that skill. The next skill is waiting for us. Opportunity doesn't knock. It never knocks. It waits for you to open the door. That's where opportunity sees the invitation. It's not going to bother you and knock on your door and say, hey, I've been out here a long time waiting for you to be ready. It circles that house of yours for a long, long time, and you open the door, and then it shows up and says, I've been waiting, I'm here now. But part of that is understanding that that door isn't just the 10, that's a door of many doors as you climb that mountain. So that's number one. The other thing is we want to look at what we call the life conditions blueprint gap. Wherever you are, say you are a 3 or a 5 or a 6, that's where you see your life the way it is now in that particular area. A 10 is where you think it should be. And again, this is one of those things where I say, well, I should be here in my business, or I should be here in my relationship. And after a while, you should all over yourself. And the problem with that is that when we should on ourselves, we're basically creating a pain, a negativity in our mind and our heart and our spirit that literally say, guess what? I'm not even going to try anymore. Because when I try and I fail, it feels worse than when I stay where I'm at, where I'm comfortable. Comfort is one of the most dangerous things that we can have in this world. You know what I'm talking about. How many times have you ever said, this is going to be my day, that you said, but first I'm going to sit on the couch for a little while and just maybe watch TV for 10 minutes. And that sitting, you kind of turn and then you're just leaning, and the leaning turns to lying. And now you're comfortable and you don't want to get up. And here's what's interesting, metaphorically speaking or physically speaking, sometimes you're uncomfortable lying down in your comfort, but you're so comfortable being uncomfortable that you actually prefer to stay there than get up and face the discomfort that you're not ready for. Mike knows this story because I said it at one of the legacy days, and it was basically about this guy that was jogging along a cliff walk in California, and he actually was looking at somebody, didn't realize where he was going, and fell off the cliff. And he got lucky, because you ever see one of those things where it's like there's a cliff and a branch and someone's holding on? Well, that's what happened to him. And he's holding on with one hand, he got the other hand up, and he's looking. And it's 15 feet minimum up, and he ain't getting up there. And he looks down, and it's a 300-foot drop, waves crashing against big rocks, right? And he's thinking, that looks dangerous. So what would anybody do in a situation like that? They would look up and say, help, help, help. Good news. He heard a voice. The voice said, I'll help you. And of course, the guy hanging on said, great. And the voice says, do you trust me? And he said, yes. And the voice said, then let go. And so then he looked down and he saw the huge drop. He saw the big waves. He saw the crashing of those waves. And he looked back up and he said, is anybody else up there? Fact of the matter is, guys, most people will hold on to the branch that's painful that they've become used to, then let their faith be bigger than their fear and let go and find out what else they're capable of. And that's where we end up having a problem when it comes to some of these things. So we have this gap, we've got to meet it. So now what? Well, let's talk about motivation briefly for a minute. As I said before, it's like a roller coaster, this motivation. Okay, but why? It's an incomplete focus. I said this before. We tend to focus on how many listings did I get? How much weight did I lose, right? How many people did I add to my sphere today or this week? And all of that's good. You can't not look at that. But the problem is we judge our success or failure on whether we reach those goals. But the truth of the matter is that a great body isn't made in a day. A great business isn't even often made in 3 months. A great relationship isn't just when you first meet. And as Chris Rock says anyway, when you first meet everybody, that you're just meeting the representative anyway. But the point is, you don't make great things happen just with the spark. You got to stoke that fire for a long, long time. You got to know how to use that fire. It can burn you or it can light things up for you. And the truth of the matter is, it's all in how we use it. So motivation says, look, the outcome is good, but it's not enough, right? Because it's what we call deferred recognition. Right? I'm getting deferred recognition. It leads to scattered motivation. When I have deferred recognition, when I don't have the listing yet, when I don't have the sale yet, I don't feel good yet. And then when things start to go bad and they start to go south, you hear people say, I'm losing the deal. They're trying to kill the deal. All these words, right? As opposed to say, hey, they want to sell, we want to buy, we're going to make this happen. And so this deferred recognition, how do we overcome it? We have to look, like we were saying before, and I'll talk to you about in a second, momentum. We've got to create the things on a day-by-day basis that we recognize and reward ourselves for. It's what we're doing every day. There's a little thing in working out, for example, where they say consistency is better than intensity. Now, there's some people, that's not true. I like intensity, and I get it, and that's fine. I have moments of intensity too. But if I get to work out every day and you need to recover every other day, I'm working out more. I'm building more muscle memory. If you read something called the Talent Code, it talks about how a day in, day out process of doing just a little bit more every day without wearing yourself out is the key to connecting the synaptic connection between your mind and your body and the things that you do to getting yourself to your highest level. So that being said, we have this deferred recognition. And then as time goes on, it begins to wear on us. They did a study of top producers and they considered this $250,000 a year or more. Okay, gotcha. $250,000 a year or more. And guess what happened? After 10 years, the majority of them were making less or out of the business. But why? Burnout. Okay. That being said, here's the second reason motivation doesn't work. People don't have a why. Okay. If you might remember in Star Wars, Luke Skywalker was trying to do this, use the Force to get the X-Wing fighter out of the muck. And he says, I can't. And Yoda looked and he's like, do or do not, there is no try. Because what Luke had said, I tried. And Yoda said, that is why you fail. Do or do not, there is no try. If your why isn't strong enough, the try is never going to be enough, if that makes sense. Let me bring it to momentum real quick. But before I do, in the back of your head, think to yourself, what is my why? What is my why? Give you an example, just so you know. Marvelous Marvin Hagler was one of the best middleweight fighters in the history of boxing. He used to knock people out. He would win these fights. His best fights, Sugar Ray Leonard, Roberto Duran. But let me tell you, he was once interviewed and said, how were you so consistent? How were you so good? Well, a lot of people don't know it. He used to have his son, and they used to eat out of just cans, sometimes just cans of food, and that was it. That's all they had. They had no money. And he goes, when I look across the ring, I don't see my opponent. I see a man that wants to take food out of my kid's mouth. That was his why, right? If he looks at me as a guy that he wants to fight, that's one thing. If he looks at me as a guy who's going to try to take food out of his kid's mouth, I'm in trouble. I'm in big trouble at that point. So then real quick momentum, and then we'll move towards the questions. You got to ask yourself, what is it that I need to do? What do I need to do to create momentum? Ninja Selling provides you with a lot of things as far as a system and a process goes on the what. The next question is how. Ninja Selling also provides you with a process for that. Go Giver does this, but what you want to do is you want to kind of put it in place so that it is a system and a process that works for you. People feel overwhelmed and say there's just so much to do. Start with one or two things. Do that for a week. Now add a third thing. Do that for a week. We had a great call one time in Ninja where we said, if you just master one of the Ninja 9 every week for 9 weeks, at 9 weeks you would have mastered them all, or at least gotten them in process. The next thing is how much. And there are 3 areas of the how much: clarity, consistency, and authenticity, right? Be very specific about what you want to do. Be very specific about how often you're going to do it, and be yourself. Be yourself. A lot of people say fake it till you make it. You know why that doesn't work? Because you know who knows you're faking it no matter what? You do. And if you're not being your authentic self, you change in the process of becoming something else. And if you change in the process of becoming something else, you lose who you were in the first place, and now you're doing it for an entirely different reason. So let's hold there for a minute. And Peter, did you want to throw some questions out there, or?
Man, I've been taking notes like crazy, and I'll be honest, it's one of the first times I've been doing this like almost every day. So
yeah,
I'm loving what you're saying. Loving it.
Thank you. I
see the
appreciate
chat
that.
going crazy as well. So, Mike, what do you think?
If you see some chat questions in there, especially if you see some that are coming up in common, I'm going to let you look for that real fast. And I'm going to ask Dennis, just for those in the audience who aren't ninja or
right.
aren't familiar with that term, sum up, if you can, briefly what ninja is, and then maybe mention Larry's book, where someone who doesn't have the access to ninja right now today could learn a little bit.
Yeah, so good news. So about the book first, so I can get that out of the way. Ninja Selling is the book. It's on Amazon, but they also have an audio book now. For those of you like me, I'm auditory. I've read the book several times. I'm an instructor with them. It's part of my thing, and I love it. It's an award-winning book. You'll love it. Even if you weren't in real estate, it actually gives you wonderful tools for your business. It's also an audiobook. So you can go on Amazon, you can order the audiobook, you can on Audible, you can order the book itself. It's fantastic. Now, what is Ninja Selling?
And it's the book is Ninja Selling
by Larry Kendall. Yeah. And Larry reads it. That's what I love. Larry reads the audiobook. So it's even better because listening to him is just like silk. I mean, he just has this Yoda-like, Miyagi-like, aura about him. I call him my Miyagi all the time. He just laughs at me. But so you get the idea. But in any case, Ninja is very simply this. It's a real estate system that was birthed back when Larry started noticing, in this case, Jim Dunlap, started bringing in all these contracts, putting it on his broker's desk, but it was at night and no one ever saw him. So they started calling Jimmy D the Ninja. And Larry goes, well, what's happening here? Why is he doing so well? High levels of customer satisfaction, right? More than that, he started looking at some of the other agents, what they were doing well. He started kind of connecting that to some of the industry information about what works well. And over at this point, it's been around a long, long time, well over 30 years, more or less, depending how you want to look at it. But the fact of the matter is, it comes down to this. How many people are in the real estate business that are doing very well but need a break sometimes? They say, I'm going to work hard, I'm going to play hard, right? But I have a little saying that if you have to escape your life on a vacation instead of celebrate your life on a vacation, you're working too hard. You also have to work smart. And what Ninja does is it shows you how to increase your dollar per hour so you can have a life. Could you imagine increasing the balance in your checkbook and your life? The ability to do both, that it doesn't have to be one or the other? Actually, in Ninja, we like to call it harmony. We don't even look at it as balance in a way. We look at it as harmony. It's integrated because we're building personal relationships with people that turn into business referrals and repeat business from the clients. And that's what it basically specializes in, and it's a beautiful thing.
Perfect, Dennis. Great summation. And it's a good thing you talk fast because you got so doggone much information. You got to fire it out there like a machine gun. Okay, Peter, you got some chat questions for him?
It's not so much questions as much as I don't think everybody was ready for you. I got one of the comments that sticks out is, I wasn't ready for the amount of motivation. Dennis is making my heart race.
Well, thank you.
And this is one of those times where I'm just sitting back and normally I have to engage in these conversations, but I'm sitting back. I'm like, just tell us more. Tell us more about your mindset. And because it's honestly, I'm reflecting on myself and saying to myself, how do I close that gap with everything that you mentioned?
I got something right here. If you want me to,
keep going.
All right. So here's an activity for all of us. And by the way, I appreciate the comments. That's really nice. The bottom line is I'm very, very passionate about this. I think it probably shows. I wanted to do this for a long, long time. So every opportunity I get, it means something. Yes. Oh, I can't hear you.
Okay. Can I, one of the questions that just popped up is, can you explain what flow is?
Yes. Flow is basically just frequency of contact. So for example, I might call somebody once a month. I might write them a personal note. Your marketing makes a big difference. And by the way, as far as marketing goes, I love this expression. Marketing creates awareness, relationships create business. If you don't market, now you have to have that awkward, I'm going to create my business through my personal interactions. But if I market, that does the real estate talk for me. And then all I have to do is use what are called forward calls or forward interactions, family, occupation, recreation, and dream. And recreation, by the way, is what they do for fun or things like that. Dream are things in the future. I'm not going to say, hey, Peter, how's your dream going, right? We won't say that. We might say something like, hey, the summer's coming up. Do you have summer plans? So those four things are all we're doing. We're meeting them for coffee. We're calling them on the phone. We're leaving voicemails, but we're also marketing ourselves so that that covers that part of it too. And frequently, we don't want to do this every quarter. We don't want to do this every 6 months. This is something you should be hitting the key people in your sphere at least once, but maybe even 2, 3, 4 times a month in a variety of ways.
And you'll feel it. You'll feel it when you're out of flow with somebody. You'll think to yourself, well, it might feel uncomfortable for me to call Mike because I haven't talked to him in months.
Yes.
That's when you know you're out of flow, right?
Yes. And by the way, when that happens, you just call Mike. You say, hey, Mike, it's Dennis. How are you? Is this a good time? And he goes, oh, it's pretty good. So listen, I know I'm calling out of the blue and this isn't going to take a long time. I'm calling because it's been a long time since we talked. And you popped into my mind and I says, oh, Lord, I haven't talked to Mike in 9 months. And I'm sorry for that. It's been real busy, but you know what? That's no excuse. So how are you, man? And that's it, right? And you know what doesn't happen? They don't go, how dare you call me after 9 months? What do you want from me? They don't do that. We think they're gonna, they don't.
And that's a good practice that a lot of times when we talk about ninja in our offices, it's just think about someone that you haven't talked to in a while, pick up the phone and call them. Or
That's it.
when you're driving down the street and somebody pops in your mind, even though you haven't talked to them since maybe high school, call them,
Yes.
right?
In that moment, right? The universe is speaking to you. Listen to it. Pick up that phone. Absolutely.
Definitely.
Absolutely.
Very cool. Well, go ahead. Sorry to interrupt. Go on
no,
to
we're good.
that next
All right.
exercise.
I saw a question that says, when will Ninja classes come back? Every company and area is going to be different for that. Ninja Selling is talking about that. So it's a hard one to answer, but as soon as it can, it will. All right. So next question I just saw right there is, how do I start my day? Everybody should have a morning routine. That's part of the mastery, by the way, right? So just quick, start off with what you're grateful for. Start off with some sort of affirmation and incantation, right? So an affirmation might be, I enjoy earning $350,000 a year more. An incantation, which could be like a Tony thing, could be every day and every way I'm getting stronger and stronger. Every day and every way I'm getting faster and faster, healthier and healthier, whatever it is. Whatever works for you. You can write it, you can say it, but the idea is start your day with it. There's other things that you can do, but at least start with that. Go to take a shower first thing right when you get in the morning. Some alone time. Do your gratitudes in there. Do your affirmations in there if you have to. Whatever it is, don't start out with the, oh, I'm up and I got to do this and then I got to do that. And you know what? Tell your mind. Mel Robbins talks about this in her book, The 5-Second Rule. As soon as that alarm clock goes off, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, shut it off. If you got 7 snooze little alarms on your iPhone because you know you're going to get to the 5th before you get up, you ain't following the 5-second rule. You got to decide, I am up again. Les Brown used to say, man, if you wake up and there's not a chalk line around your body, it's a great day, right? So get up. What are we waiting for? Oh, I want to sleep a little bit more. You know what? You're probably doing that moment until you get up and start doing things, gratitudes and affirmations, and you know what's going to happen? You're going to be glad you're awake. You're always glad when you're awake, when you're living with purpose. All right. So let's do this activity real quick. This activity is pick an area of your life or business that you picked the 1 through 10. We kind of already did that. Remember your score. Now, ask yourself, this is the most important part here, why is that area important to you to improve? Why is that area important for you? So people might say, my relationship with my spouse. Okay, where were you? I was a 6. Okay, why is getting that number up? Why is building that relationship into? So they got to have their why. So go ahead, guys, think about that for about 15 seconds, 20 seconds. What area did you pick? Where was your number? Why is this an important area for you to improve? Now, once you've decided that, and by the way, if you don't have the why now, don't feel the pressure. It's not a game show. All right, you got time for your why. But let's just say you have a why. The next thing is, what tasks or actions do we need to take in order to close that gap? We've talked about that already. That's what's next, but this is your flow pattern, right? So pick an area. What was the score? Why is it important? Now, what tasks or actions off the top of my head can I think of to close that gap? Now, how will we choose to do these things, right? Will we choose to do them in person? Will we choose to do them on the phone? Is this something, if it's our health, that we can only do ourselves? For example, we may say, I'm going to go join a gym, or I'm going to work out in my backyard. You got to choose these things, right? So here's the thing. Once that happens, how often do these things need to be done? So for example, I have a 15-minute exercise rule, and I give myself a 1 to 2 day gap, which means every day I'll exercise for at least 15 minutes, and a lot of times it's 30, 45, but whatever it is, but I give myself a day or 2 that I won't. Something might come up, I might need the rest. So I've created a process for success where I know it's better to do 15 minutes 5 days than to do an hour and a half 1 or 2 days. And because that consistency is creating a habit in my mind, right, in the neural pathways, it's so easy for people to go 1 or 2 times a week. And then all of a sudden, 3 months later, they're not going at all because they haven't created that process. They haven't created that neurosynaptic connection where it feels good to go, where the reward is every day. I go, I feel good, there's my reward, I want to go back. All right, that being said, clarify what needs to be done and when and how often it will then be done. And what I love about this is this last little phrase I got from a gentleman by the name of Michael Port is, are you manufacturing authenticity in addition to your productivity? Now, what that means is, and I'll repeat that, are you manufacturing authenticity in addition to your productivity? People, manufacturing authenticity sounds a little bit fake. Here's the thing. That's when you practice stuff so often, so well, that it becomes part of who you are. Does that make sense? Here's something I asked my daughter years ago. She was 16 at the time. And I said, Antonia, do you think money changes people? And she said, no. I go, what do you think? She goes, I just think it makes them more of who they are. If you make money and you don't evolve in the process that make money to a higher version of yourself, the old self has a lot more money than it did before. And you'll find a lot of people who run into those situations lose their money quick, trying to be something they're not because they didn't evolve to the person they needed to be to handle that level of success. When you see real estate agents or anybody that's a business owner that does well and loses it all quick, lottery winners that have all that money and lose it all quick, it's because they didn't evolve in the process of how they got that money. They just made it about the money. And when you make it just about the money, guess what happens? You are still here, but the money is there and there's a gap again. You have to evolve with it. Because what happens to most people is they make a lot of money, but they haven't evolved, and now they're holding on to the money that they've made, as opposed to saying, let me take more risks, let me take more chances, let me go into a different direction. You know all about that, Pete, right? So it's like, I'm here, let me go here, let me go here. No risk, no reward. So that's part of it. All right. I have one last section, and if there's any other questions after that, this last section might be helpful. Is that okay? Okay. So there's a I know them. So there's a great story about this guy named Cortez. Cortez was a conqueror, right? I know he had a business card that said conqueror on it. So Cortez was following many conquerors who wanted to go over to the South Americas and kind of defeat this tribe that was over there because they had all this gold. And what was happening was every year they would send, or even sometimes several times a year, they would send people down there and many of them would not come back. They were killed. Right? So they went there for the gold, they went there for the glory, and they never really came back. Cortez felt differently. He knew that this was going to be different. So he convinced the king to give him ships, to give him men, and to go there and conquer. And everybody was psyched up. You know what I mean, right? You've been to the rallies before. You've been to those places where everybody's jacked up and the music is playing and everything's good and we're all succeeding, and we want to go make it happen, right? And we do for a couple weeks. And that was what happened on the ships. They were excited. They were ready. We're going to conquer. We're going to have gold. We're going to have glory. And then they get to see the shore. And then they started thinking about all the risks. And then they started thinking about possibly dying. And then they were freaking out. And Cortez saw this, and he knew what he had to do. He goes, put the anchors in. He goes, what I want you to do is get in these boats. So we're going to go into shore. But before we do, I want you to light up some torches because it's getting dark, right? And they're like, oh, I don't know. Well, okay. So they're in the boats. They got the torches. And he goes, all right, now, before we go to shore, there's something I want you guys to do. And he says, what do you need us to do, sir? He said, burn the ships. Just burn them. Throw the torches to our ships. And they go, excuse me? He says, burn the ships. If we're going back to Spain, we're doing it on their ships, not ours. Do you have that kind of mentality? Because mastery requires it. Do you kind of have that kind of mindset where you're like, I am committed? Committed doesn't mean distraction, squirrel, move over here. It means committed. Your why is strong. Your steps are clear. Your persistency and your resiliency is consistent every single day. It makes a huge, huge difference. What most people don't realize is how important this why is, that to fight for your life, like physically, isn't the only fight of your life. The fight for your life physically isn't the only fight of your life. The fight of your life is every day, so that you were put here on this earth, in this world, to leave yourself behind in a way that you're not forgotten. In fact, I love this quote, and maybe you guys will too. It says, the closest we will ever get to immortality is our legacy. I bet you Mike likes that one, right? Coldwell Banker legacy here. But the closest we will ever get to our immortality is our legacy. Now check this out. This is so important. You only live as long as the last person who remembers you. So what does it have to do with everything? Well, we can't actually be immortal, but we can leave a legacy. And that legacy lasts as the last person who remembers us. But if we impact people, if we make them feel great about themselves, if we add value to their lives, if we're a friend when they needed it, if we help their family in some way through our services or just who we are as a person, if we do this in such a way that it impacts people, that not just they only send us business, but they remember us. They remember us even when we're gone. And they maybe they tell stories about that one person when they were in need was there for them. The fact of the matter, guys, is that, and I don't know what your beliefs are, whether you believe in whatever creator the situation is, but in my belief, I wasn't put on this earth to be average. I wasn't put on this earth to just get by. And I'm guessing you feel the same way. But I ask you this. Do you believe your creator, whoever that was, for you, put you on this earth to be average? Do you think that your creator would come down to you and say right now, hey, Dennis, I don't want you to try too hard. I don't want you to aspire. I want you to keep your goals low. I want you to just play small as long as you can. Be afraid as much as you can so that other people can shine around you. You are not one of the chosen ones. You stay down and keep yourself down. And you know what? How many people, and you can answer this for yourselves right now, believe your creator would ever say that to you? And I'm going to tell you right now, I'm going to take a guess that almost everybody on this call right now is sitting there saying to themselves, the creator would never say that to me. But you know what? I agree with you. The question is, then why do we say that to ourselves? Was the creator lying? Was the creator not telling the truth? Were they just kind of making us feel good in the moment? Or are we not listening? Oprah talks about God's whisper. God's whisper is every time you have a challenge in your life, it is a prayer you haven't had yet that's already being answered. The prayer to make things better isn't what makes things better. It's the challenge that you got that makes you want to pray. That's the answer for the question you already have. You can't make more of yourself in life without going through pain. The question is, do you want to see it that way? Do you want to say, oh man, life is happening to me or life is happening for me? Bottom line.
Mic drop all over the place. I'm saying mic drop, mic drop, mic drop. So one of the questions that I get often from our agents is we have to be very committed to our business, right? We have to be obsessed with our business.
Yeah.
But a lot of us have kids. A lot of us
Yeah.
obviously have families. And a lot of the questions I get are, how do you balance that?
Right.
And being so motivated at work and then falling short as a parent or a spouse?
Right.
What's your view on that?
There's two parts to this. And one is that, you know, we have this mindset sometimes that we have to be there for the kids based on guilt, right? And there's certain, obviously there are 3 or 4 that's a little bit different. But here's the key. Number one, you got to have an infrastructure and a home system and a process to make sure that you're backing each other up. If the husband and the wife or the partners that are there don't have a system and they're both shooting for significance, who's the most important? I've seen this happen. You know, oh, my day was horrible. Your day was horrible. My day was horrible. No, mine was worse than you. Now they're both arguing about whose day was worse. That's a nice relationship. And so at the end of the day, they have to have a system and a process in place that's going to say, what do we do in these situations? So they got to think ahead of time. But here's the trick. What Ninja is so good at doing, and I bring it up because it's the best I've seen at this, is they basically say, look, you have children. Those children have parents. There's your sphere. Even if they're not in your sphere, that becomes your sphere. You just talking to those parents about their things and you're sharing that, now you're instantly connected. Guess what happens as the kids get older? They're going to want to move. Guess what happens when they live in a neighborhood and the other kids move out of the neighborhood? They're going to want to move. They're going to know people who want to move. In fact, the average person knows 4 people are going to buy or sell real estate every year. So all you have to do is look at where is my life personally and how can I harmonize that into my business? Problem is, and I'm not saying you shouldn't do these things, we're always looking for ways to not talk to people that we know or to not know people that we don't. We're always calling people that we don't know, who have agents calling them all the time. You're going to get more business from 50 to 100 people that you know than 1,000 to 3,000 people you don't. Those are the statistics. That's not my opinion. That doesn't mean you can't do the other thing. It just simply means you might want to try this process first, where I'm calling those 50 people that are in my database, those 100 people that are in my database, and just ask them how they're doing, remembering their birthday, remembering their anniversary, remembering the holidays, and send out my real estate information. And you're going to have harmony. Second thing is this, stop feeling so obligated. How about don't answer your phone or look at text first thing in the morning, right? I wake up, oh, who's the buyer that might have gone online that happens to be in Japan right now at a different time zone? You know what? Right away, you're letting other people's priorities pull you out of whack. If you're going to start the day in balance, the rest of the day is going to be in balance. Start off with that morning routine, show gratitude, do your affirmations, move a little bit. Just get the body going, do whatever you got to do. You got people in your house, man, don't talk to anybody by text, by email, or phone until you've kissed and hugged each and every one of them and tell them that you love them. Then you start your day. And that's how you end up with harmony. At the end of the day, same thing. Don't sit on the couch and go, all right, guys, good night. right? You don't have to tuck them in if they're 17. I know that's awkward. What I'm saying is say goodnight, give them a hug. They might not want to hug you. They don't have to hug you back. You hug them. It's not a matter of what they do. It's a matter of what you do. And even when it's one of those things like, all right, good night, like that. Oh, come here. Oh, what are you hugging me for? You hug them. Or you just say, you know what? I really love you. I was really proud of you today. Every day you have harmony with your family when they have your presence. Remember this phrase. If you show enough love, you will have a presence that's present, even when you're not present. It's when they think of you in the hardest times because you're their rock, that you physically needing to be there isn't always as important as them knowing that you are. I hope that answers your question. If they have further questions, you can email me and I'll be happy to answer some of the questions that come through. I'm a little it might be a lot of emails, but.
No, that was perfect. That was a perfect answer, and I'm grateful for that. And honestly, that was my question too. I have 2 little girls running around, and yeah, it's tough. I mean, I took my younger one out this morning and made her ride a bike and run for 3 miles. I think that's a good parent. I woke her up and took her out early. Yes. But I think a lot of us on this call and all the calls that we're doing really are struggling with that right now.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Well, it's just having your boundaries and also having your priorities. And somewhere between where your priorities are and your boundaries are, you want to make those gaps the things that you fill with love and with good things, like you did this morning.
Very cool. Very cool. Did we lose Mike? Where's Mike at?
I don't know.
Mike.
I think he's going to go tell his family members he loves them.
He's like, enough of Peter and Dennis. I mean, hey, Mike. So
I had to close my office door. It was getting noisy outside.
Let's see. Dennis, do you have any closing nuggets that you want to give the group?
The only thing I would say to everybody is this. I mean, at the end of the day, it is always up to us. And, I could have given up when that person said, don't go to college. I didn't tell you this, but I actually have an associate's, a bachelor's, 2 masters, and an ABD for doctorate. I'm also going to tell you that's not to be impressive, because it's not. I did it because I felt insignificant. I did too much trying to make up for what I was told. So don't go down the wrong path because of what someone said, but use what they said to bring you down the right path instead. At the end of it, I was always in real estate, and I always wanted to speak and coach and train and help people. And that's all I needed to know. All the degrees weren't necessarily necessary. So sometimes make sure that you're choosing things because you have passion for it, because you feel it in your heart and your mind and your soul, not because you think you should do, right? Because at the end of the day, you'll get those degrees and you have a nice big loan to go along with it that you got to pay off with all your closings, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. But sometimes we pick things that are safe. Sometimes we pick things that are easy. Sometimes we pick things that we feel other people want us to do. Don't do that. You know in your heart, your mind, and your soul what's right for you, what's right for your family. Follow it. Follow that path, and you'll always come out on top.
Dennis, thank you so much. Mike, thank you so much. One of the questions in the chat that we'll close with is, how do these webinars keep getting better? And I think the answer to that is our Coldwell Banker network is really strong. It's teamwork. It's all of the leaders of Coldwell Bankers from around the country and even the world chiming in saying, hey, I know Dennis. He's a great speaker. Let's get him on. So to everybody at Coldwell Banker who's helped put these calls together continuously, I mean, we have so many more coming. Thank you. Mike, thank you. You might not know this. I'm sure you do because I tell you all the time. I really look up to you and have a ton of respect for you. And I'll never forget the conversation that we had in Napa about wake-up money. I don't know if you remember that, but thank you for that. And it resonates with Dennis's talk today. So thank you.
You bet.
Thank you, guys. I really appreciate you giving me the opportunity today. To all you out there, God bless you, and do everything you can, because this world's only going to get better.
Outstanding job, Dennis. Peter,
thank you, sir.
Great job moderating. And everybody that's out there, terrific job tuning into these. These things really can change your life. And Peter, my hat's off to you if I had one like you.
Have a great day, guys. Go out there and crush it. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye, buddy.